Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, Just a Bloke. I am Sam, and I am just a bloke. Today's video is going to be about making connections in the modern world. I think the internet has allowed us to be, in many ways that we never could be, more connected than ever. We can fly completely across the world in 12 hours, whereas before, boat trips would take 3 months and you'd probably die or drown or get scurvy on the way. The internet allows us to message anyone from anywhere, have video calls with anybody from anywhere, across time zones, across the other side of the planet. It's an incredible tool. However, I think the internet has, ironically, led to us, to a great majority of us, or maybe not a majority, but a great deal of us feeling more lonely and isolated than ever and struggling to make connection. I think the risk of the internet is that, or the online world is that, before, if you wanted to make friends, find a partner, whatever, eventually, even if you were anxious, you were forced to go outside and make those connections because that was the only way you could do it. And humans, being social animals, that's how we're hardwired to operate. That's how we were built. And interacting with people would produce all sorts of chemicals, and it would force you to build your social skills. You didn't have a choice because it was either that or be alone forever. Back before the internet was as widespread and as complex as it is now. However, now, people that are less socially inclined or maybe experience high levels of anxiety, they don't really need to leave their house anymore to have connection. And although I'm not necessarily talking down on making online friendships. I've made online friendships that have turned into real life friendships, and that's been amazing, and it can be a great tool. However, I think the reason that we've seen such an increase in loneliness recently is due to the fact that people are substituting that real life connection for that purely online connection. And whilst it can be a sort of easy way to make friends, there's low barriers to entry in that there's not that physical contact present, which can be good if you're experiencing high levels of anxiety. It will often, if that's your sole way of making friends, I think that will hinder you in the long term because you're substituting it for those real life experiences, which are ultimately much more valuable, I believe. I think even biologically, when you give someone a hug, oxytocin, which is a happy chemical, is produced. Physical contact with friends, whether that's a hug, slapping each other on the arm or shoulder, like laughing and clasping your hand over someone's back, and just like, I think even there's studies that show that just good conversations with friends in real life will produce all the sort of happy chemicals that we need to stay happy and not sad and not depressed, which is pretty difficult nowadays considering the state of the world, but there you go. So I think I'm going to break down the video into 2 parts. The first part being why making connections is so important, which I guess I've already sort of touched upon in the intro, but I'll expand further upon, and then advice that I have on how to make a connection. So why is making connection so important? Well, I've already touched upon it a bit in that humans are incredibly social creatures. We were sort of designed to be social, evolutionarily. When we were Neanderthals running around hunting mammoths, we'd hunt it in tribes, or tribes is probably the correct word. And that was where a lot of our success as a species came from, was the unrivaled ability to cooperate and work as a team. So social ability and making connections is sort of baked into our foundation as humans. Additionally, if one of the other big things for most people is finding a partner, finding love, marriage, whatever it is for you, and in order to do that, connections need to be made. Otherwise, if you're not going out making connections, you're likely to live a more isolated and more lonely and ultimately unhappier life than if you are to go out there and make connections. So in terms of how you go about making connections, there are obviously a million ways to make a connection. And I'm never going to be able to give you every scenario because I'd be here. I could record a video from now until the end of time and you probably still wouldn't document all the ways in which you can make connection with a human. But I'm going to try and generalize it and give sort of 3 blanket areas that I fall back onto quickly or almost naturally when I want to make a connection with somebody new. I'm saying this, I guess, with quite a lot of confidence. I would describe myself as extremely extroverted. I often take great amounts of pleasure from making connections with new people. I find, without being too far up my own arse, it comes quite naturally to me, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. So I think there are sort of three things that I automatically fall back on well, not that I do, but if I'm struggling to make a connection, these are the sort of things that I would talk about in order to instantly make that sort of connection. So those three areas are religion, which might be a surprising one, religion, food, and shared interest / hobbies. So I'll start with religion, because some of you might be thinking that, religion can be quite a divisive topic, and it's maybe not something you should discuss, and maybe if, you've just met someone, it might not be the first thing you bring up after, hi, I'm Sam, oh, you're Muslim, cool, let's talk about it. Or it may be, but I think, there's ways to play it, and religion can be a delicate subject, but I think only if approached from a sense of judgment, not from a place of curiosity. And I think I'm going to make a separate video about why curiosity is one of the most important and invaluable skills that any human can have, and why you should sort of cultivate that sense of curiosity as much as you can, but that's a separate video. What I mean by religion in a sense of making connections with people is that often, whatever religion they are, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Jewish, I think those are the major ones, I've probably left one out, but whatever religion they are, it will often play a massive part in their life. And if you as someone, well, even if you're of the same religion, then perfect, you've got a lot to discuss about. But for example, me, I'm not particularly religious. I don't follow any one of the main religions. I would describe myself as agnostic. However, I have managed to connect with people, make very strong connections with people through their religion, and the way that I've done that is through my curiosity towards and appreciation of their religion. So, for example, I've got a lot of Muslim friends, and I think I wouldn't have made the connections, or the connections with my Muslim friends wouldn't be as strong as they are now currently, if I hadn't had learned about their religion, and I guess it's part and parcel of their culture. So for example, Muslims fast for Ramadan. It's a month each year. It changes with the lunar calendar, and it's, I believe, I'm sure Muslims could correct me in the comments, but it's the holiest month of the year. And there's a celebration at the end called Eid. Well, there's two different Eids, I think, during the year, but the big one is usually after Ramadan, where they break their fast, and they fast between the hours of sunrise and sunset. So in the summer, you can imagine, well, especially with the British summer, where the sun rises at about 5 a.m. and sets at like 9 p.m, it can be pretty brutal. And there's no food or water either, which the water is the toughest one. Having done Ramadan, water is the toughest one. Anyway, aside from the mini lesson about Islam aside, the way in which I connected was just asking them loads of questions and eventually participating. I was actually invited to participate in Ramadan. For the first time I did it was for a week, and then eventually off my own back I started fasting for the whole month in later years. But that is a great way to connect to someone. Just ask in general, with all of the advice I'll give you for all of these ones. If you don't know what to do, and you want to you know someone and you admire them, or you think they're cool and you want to make a connection with them, just start asking about their religion. If they're Christian, be like, oh, that's really cool. Like, how long have you been Christian for? Have you been since birth? Were you baptized like later on in life? What is it about your faith that gives you the most comfort? I don't know. Anything you're curious about, really. Even what's your favorite Bible verse, and what lesson do you think it can teach people, or what's your favorite excerpt from the Quran, or why do people do Ramadan? Why do people do Lent? Why do people celebrate, like, what's Diwali about? What's like the coolest? What do you think the coolest part about your religion? There's a million questions you can ask, and I'm not gonna list them all here. But the point is just show an interest in something that they are passionate about and are interested in, which I think is I guess overall is the overarching piece of advice across all these three areas. But I think religion could be a really good one, and it also just gives you a more from a selfish perspective, it gives you a more rounded worldview. And religion, whether we like it or not, is a big influencing factor in the world, full stop. So I think if you can understand a bit more about someone's religion from their perspective, and learn a bit. I think it just helps to round your worldview, which is never a bad thing. And if you can make a connection with someone at the same time, then everyone's winning. So that's number one. Number two is food. I don't know about you guys, but I love food. I'm obsessed with it, which is lucky because we all have to eat every day to survive. And again, coming back to the culture thing, food, just as I would argue, just as much as religion, is a big part of someone's identity, someone's culture. You know, people are very sort of proud of the country they're from, often in tandem with the food that they produce or the food they eat. Each country has its own national dish for a reason. You know, food is a massive part of everyone's life. So if you can get someone talking about food, you know, there are lots of different ways to say it. Again, you can ask a bunch of questions. You can tell someone, you know, my favorite food is XYZ. What's your favorite food? And again, I'll make a separate video on, like, you know, how you go about approaching someone in a conversation, because I think that is a separate sort of video. This is more sort of what to talk about if you don't know what to talk about, in terms of how you go about approaching someone that you don't know, or who's a stranger, or who you don't talk to a lot. That'll probably be a separate video. But again, it basically boils down to asking questions, staying engaged with the questions you've asked, ask follow-up questions, or when they share something that you think is cool, then you can try and relate it back to yourself, even if it doesn't directly relate to you. So for example, if one of your friends is Indian, or one of the people that you're speaking to is Indian and they enjoy spicy food, you can, if you're from a country that doesn't really eat spicy food, you can go, oh, that's really interesting. I don't really like spicy food, you know, there's not a lot of spicy food in my culture. Can I try it? You know, it'd be great if we could go grab some Indian food together and you can show me, you know, what some spicy Indian food is like. Or, you know, share a piece of food from your culture. Go, oh, well, you know, we don't eat a lot of spicy food, but I don't know, I'm Italian and I've got this really amazing linguine or something that I want to give you. I don't really know, but you get the point. It's just about sharing things that people are passionate about and that you're passionate about, and showing it that interest in kind. And the final one is shared hobbies and interests. Obviously, if you share an interest like football, I don't actually like football, which is very rare for a man in Britain, but any sort of sport, any sort of shared interest, whether it's, I'm just going to list mine off now, but like chess, skiing, gaming, anime, scuba diving, whatever it is, you know, reading, I don't know, crossword puzzles, whatever turns you on. I think it's important to share what excites you, and you know, if that doesn't excite them, I think the key thing to remember with all this, especially if you are someone with anxious, is that if you're making the effort to connect with someone and they sort of meet it with like hostility or shoot you down or like, oh, that's weird, then they're a judgmental dickhead and they're not the sort of person that you want to be actually making any sort of long lasting connection with anyway. So if your fear is that, you know, your excitement or passion is not going to be reciprocated, then if it is, then you should almost be grateful that they've shown that side of themselves to you that quickly, because that means that, you know, they're not the right person for you, and that you can just, you know, bye-bye, see you later, go find someone else that values your passion. Because I think, especially, I've seen it where, you know, I ask my friends, and I'm a very inquisitive person, so I'll ask my friends about their interests, and you can see them just absolutely light up, like a Christmas tree. Like, it's brilliant, and it's brilliant to watch, even though I am genuinely interested. It's a lovely feeling to see someone get so passionate about whatever they're passionate about, and being able to be that sort of, like, I don't know, like that person they can bounce off of, and they feel that they can really share it with you. For me, that's excellent, and that's, I guess, you know, part of being human. So yeah, I guess that's sort of my three. If I were to struggle with making connections and I didn't really know where to start, those would be those are the three things that I've found the sort of most successful in terms of making instant connections very quickly, that often leads to a sort of deeper, long-lasting connection with that person. So yeah, if you found this helpful, as per usual, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm uploading videos every Friday at 8:30, so hopefully you can start your Friday off right with one of my videos. If you found this helpful, I'll probably be following this video up with how to actually have a conversation with a person if that's something that people are struggling with, because you know it's sort of the natural follow-on from this, or my brain will jump to a completely different topic, but who knows, so I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Cool, thanks guys, see you later, love you, bye.